Actually, we gilded inside the cracks of this one, inside the kind of fissures on the planter box. This is a variegated gold leaf. My idea for that was, when you break open a precious stone, you get the gem inside.
As citizens of the city, we often assume someone is looking after it, when often they aren't. It's much more of a Wild West in public space than people think it is.
That it becomes this very anonymous individual working within the city so that it becomes, I guess, a gift to the city. And it's not so much about the persona or the individual who's doing it, it's very much about urban design.
I moved from an interest in graffiti art and started really following what was happening with other types of interventions and street art, you might call it. My passion for it just increased, and I've kept going since then.
Thinking about alternative ways of getting up, and what I decided to do was start engraving padlocks and being able to just lock them around the city. You occasionally see locks locked to things like bicycle locks that people have forgotten, and they're there for forever. So I thought this would be a great way to, especially in the wintertime when it's cold, do some projects on the inside and then just slap them up outside nice and quick. Sure enough, these have been here for a couple years, not sure exactly how long. They've rusted. And so this is just my name plus my little symbol. The idea being it's just like knot work, tying the hoop of the lock together to form the letter. Of course, street art came out of graffiti, and graffiti used to be, in the very early days, kids, writing their name, and when they got to a certain age, they actually passed that name on to someone else. So you'd have the next generation. It's kind of like skateboarding. It's a recreational sport. It's an activity. There are people out there who kind of get off on the thrill of it and the adrenaline and the idea that it's an art crime. For me, I never liked that.
Graffiti has a huge stigma behind it, but because of that stigma, anything that might be related to it, street art is often put into the same basket.
The great thing about working outdoors is that it's always hungry. There's no end to it. There's always room for more work. And also it's not precious. You just work hard, you work a lot, you're always working, and it doesn't matter. It gets wiped out, it gets erased, and that's kind of really liberating in a way. Ah, it's just a decoration. It's a tomato plant. The reward is so much higher, and especially for a young artist, what you really want more than anything else is just that audience.
I think this one's kind of a nice, modest gesture in the fact that this won't last forever. It'll probably wash out in the rain. But I kind of like that idea, like these natural urban interventions that they're just these small, kind of like acupunctural insertions in the city. These are just small sketchbook ideas and could probably take it a lot further than what I'm suggesting here.
Find inspiration everywhere, really. A lot of it, because I'm interested in public space, comes from my lived environment, from the city itself, where wherever I'm traveling, I'm always keeping my eyes open. This plant-based work, that's definitely part of my interest in doing it, is to look more at our destruction of the environment, but also how we might be able to start improving it. There needs to be change both from a large point of view, but also in small, little gestures as well.
But when they reveal to us all the doubts, all the maybe psychological fragilities, all the angers, we get frightened and we cut off. In so many ways, we're just a lonely people.
There's a lot of disconnect in modern cities. It's sort of a mollification of public space, you know? You're allowed to come as long as you're there to spend money. You shouldn't really loiter too long, and this line between private and public is really getting blurred much more towards the private. This is your city, but it's not really. You're just a tenant here. First it was sleeping, now it's sitting. Before you know, we're gonna have to keep moving. We're not allowed to stay standing in a spot.
You just need to kind of go out there and almost take ownership of the city, because I don't think a lot of people actually do that. You go from point A to point B when you go through an urban environment without almost caring about what's happening out there or who's taking responsibility for that object. No one actually does take responsibility for what happens unless something goes horrendously wrong.
So this is I guess the third day that they've been up. You can see our cuts a little bit, but the grass is doing really well. The rain probably helped quite a bit, actually. Okay, so this one's looking a little bit rough, but not too bad. Just patch that up. There's a lot of room for more citizen participation and more engagement in the city, more active interaction with your own environment. You know, it's not just the corporate voice that you're hearing or the government voice or the lowest common denominator. You know, it's a mix of everybody who lives in the space.
When you do this sort of art process, you're wandering around the streets a lot, you're exploring weird sort of areas of the city. Without changing a thing, the whole city is reimagined as like a playground. And you really get to know the city. And as this process goes on over the years, if you stay active, you are really having an impact. You are changing this, even if it's not lasting, you are literally changing it. We still have these junky flyer boxes all over the city, littered everywhere. Half the time, they're being used as garbage cans. Apparently, the way this industry works is they work off of advertising revenue. So they claim a certain amount of circulation, but it's cheaper for them not to actually go out and put these junky flyers in every flyer box. I was just looking at these and thinking about, wouldn't it be nicer if all these garbage cans could be planter boxes? Apparently, the real reason why I had such a reaction is that I was showing that they weren't filling up their end of the bargain. I never thought of myself as an activist until I began to be called that. I realized that is kind of the model I'm working in. I'm making this sort of art stunt, if you will. That's powerful. Advertising is the major medium of communication outdoors, but at the end of the day, it's only meant to sell something. It's everywhere, and they are making a profit off of our spaces. The problem with public advertising, most of the time, is that it just takes, it doesn't give. We do have more of a backlash where people want to see the other side of things. That's one of the great roles that street art plays. You just need the chutzpah to go do it.
One of my goals is to bring extra attention to how our city is shaped and how our culture and laws are shaped as well, because people take the status quo for granted a lot of the time. I think a lot of it comes down to just public opinion, so things can actually change if there's enough public will.
I know, maybe it happens, fair enough. We just like to see it's a little bit of an urban wall, green wall. Pardon? Oh, yeah, I totally come by every single other day and just give them a sprinkle of water. And if you're willing to do that yourself, that'd be awesome. I don't think they'll die. The idea is it's a good urban hack where basically the infrastructure of the city, you just simply repurpose it for something else. In this case, why not make an urban garden out of just kind of like, you know, ubiquitous urban advertising? If I'm feeling like a nice guy, I'll come back and water it, but people are pretty good about that. They feel for the plants, it's great. So that's a C-H-I-L-L-I-N-G. Well, if I understand correctly, it's only -15, which isn't too bad, but the wind chill is pretty insane. But that should do nicely for these guys, me being the always optimist, that they'll freeze up quite nicely. Gotta love winter. I love the idea of semi-permanence and ephemerality, because I guess with old school street art and whatnot, it was always very much about making a permanent mark, saying that you're out there. I kind of like the idea of being completely anonymous and putting up work that's entirely different, that nobody knows who it really is. I can't read that tag. It's just this intervention in the city. And I think it's kind of brilliant when you know as a viewer that that thing's not going to last. It makes it a bit more precious and I think a bit more palatable and acceptable.
There's so many issues around public space. It's not a neutral blank canvas. There is nowhere in this city that is neutral. When you make a piece or put it up, it's political.
Yeah, so again, this is all part of the Outside the Planter Boxes project I organized. And we installed these different planter interventions all over the city. The installation for this planter was installed by a resident of this area, and he saw our installations that we were doing. He found out a little bit more about it and decided to do a couple of his own. One of them here, he's made kind of a Zen garden using recycled bike tires. This one, you see the sign he made, Great Canadian Fake in brackets swimming hole. It was his jab, he said, at the G20 and the fake lake that they made here in the city. So this planter, the art was made by Karen Abel. It was just full of garbage. She took out all these beer containers. She brought them home and folded them into these origami flowers.
Admittedly, I kind of happened across this whole idea because, quite frankly, I was bored with work, bored with my life, and that's nobody else's problem but mine. This incredibly vibrant city, but like, why is it that I can't do anything interesting or special with it? There's this bureaucracy around public and private spaces. If you start playing with those boundaries, I think you get pretty nice and interesting results. And quite frankly, a lot of this work wouldn't hold up in the gallery in any sense. But once you put it out in the city, it has that much more of a visceral grit. This idea of public-private space is a very black and white argument, and I think there's this gray zone that we all need to acknowledge. That the city these days isn't built like that anymore. I was thinking while I was doing this, I might as well do just like a giant like image of a lion with these dandelions. So it's like this play on words or something. But that's definitely something to do next time. Again, these are urban sketches. While I'm doing it, I'm thinking about how I can expand the idea and what these can become. Has a lot of dandelions. Fair enough, fair enough. Oh, Eric. Nice to meet you. See you around Austin a lot. Cheers.
A lot of people pass by without noticing it, and that's fine. But it is rewarding to know that I am in a city where interesting things happen.
It's a sign of life in a city when there's a lot of creativity being expressed.
Projects like this can really highlight a problem and then allow change to happen. That's powerful. I think it is important as a reminder just how complex and crazy and wonderful cities are.